Hello there, welcome everyone. My name is Pamela Teitelbaum. I'm the Director for Evaluating Impact at the Tamarack Institute, and I'm really happy to welcome you to Assessing the Effects of Local Intersectoral Action, a new online tool webinar today. And it is really my pleasure to be hosting this webinar with our very special guest speakers, Angèle Bilodeau, Marie-Pier Saint-Louis, and Gillian Kranias. Before we get started, I would like to just give a moment to reflect on the land that we are gathering on. We begin this workshop by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land, and we are really grateful for the opportunity to meet, and we thank all of the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this land. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of the truth and reconciliation real in our communities. So I invite you as well to take a moment and say hello in the chat box and indicate with the land that you are situated on if you would like to do that. Before we get started, I would also like to introduce our guest speakers today. I'll first start with Angèle Bilodeau. Angèle is a full researcher professor in the School of Public Health at University of Montreal. University of Montreal. She is a researcher at the Center of Interactions, the CIUSSS du Nord de l'île de Montréal, and at Canada Research Chair at Proche Communautaire et Intégralité de Santé. Her research contributions include intersectoral collaborations and governance, action and partnership and social innovation, and effects of intersectoral action on local neighborhoods. Welcome, Angèle. My next guest, I would like to introduce Marie-Pier Saint-Louis. She's the research professional, Canada Research Chair in Community Approaches on Health Inequalities, CACIS. And she has extensive experience supporting concerted action processes in social development and the fight against poverty. Working for several years with Angèle Bilodeau, Marie-Pier participated in the development of the tool for assessing the effects of local intersectoral action, which we'll be presenting today, a knowledge transfer tool developed in partnership with local actors in the community. Gillian Kranias is the last person I would like to introduce today as one of our guest speakers. She's an external consultant with Canada Research Chair in Community Approaches in Health Inequalities. Gillian works in community leadership, joint action, partnerships, equity, and community planning. She has supported groups and networks across Ontario for more than 15 years. Gillian invites you to read her past and current work on LinkedIn. So for those of you who are interested, please invite you to go to LinkedIn and check out her profile. I would really like to take a moment just to welcome you all here today. And I acknowledge who's in the room from the various countries and locations. So today we have about 200 learners that registered for the webinar from Canada, the US, the United Kingdom, South Africa, Greece, Australia, and New Zealand. So really a wide range of participants coming from the nonprofit community sector, the consulting sector or consulting work, the education, foundation sector, government, and health. So we have a wide variety of people here today with a vast experience. And so we look forward to hearing from you as well during the Q&A. As a reminder, please do feel free to write your questions in the question and answer box, and we will be holding a question and answer session. As the agenda indicates today, we're currently now doing the introductions, and then I'm going to pass it over to my three guest speakers to do the presentation with you today for about 35 minutes roughly. And then we will have time for a question and answer period at the end, and then some announcements. So without further ado, actually, I'd like to pass it on to you. You're on mute, Gillian.
That was a classic move. Okay. Thank you so much, Pamela. It's great to be here and with Angèle and Marie-Pier. I put my long, I also wanted to do a land acknowledgement because I'm elsewhere on Turtle Island. I put that into the chat there, but please don't be like intimidated because I had prepared that in advance. It's really great when people add in where they're from, and that's nice for some to look at and for us to consider after. Thank you for those who did already. Yes, and I am coming from the traditional territories right now of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples, so otherwise known as the City of Toronto. And very excited, as I mentioned, to share this tool with you, and really want to appreciate Angèle and Marie-Pier and Pamela and other partners in bringing it to this English-speaking audience today. So the tool's online now. This is the official launch. Marie-Pier is going to put the link into the chat box, but we hope you won't get lost there. Some people are good at multitasking, but it's quite an elaborate tool. And so today is really about taking you on a tour of the tool. And then we hope you'll be able to go there afterwards and spend more time with it and consider using it. We want to start with a glossary of 2 words that are in the tool. I'm still on the first slide. Oh, yeah. These are our objectives. Sorry, I should cover them. As I mentioned, the introduction. Near the end, we're going to look at ways to use the tool, and we hope that you might have questions and comments around that as well when we get to the questions and dialogue section. So just before going into the presentation, there's 2 terms that we just wanted to talk about, and one of them is actor. I love it now. It's a great term, but I don't really remember using it much in English in our work, in our collaborations, until I started working with Francophones from Quebec. So actor means a participant in an action or a process. So that's the way that we're using it. And it's a bit of a synonym is stakeholder, or there might be other terms that you use. Also, this tool uses in its title the word intersectoral. And we are very aware that there's lots of different subcultures of use of English across Canada and around the world. So I wanted to invite people even to put in the chat box, because it'll be a curious exchange. What are the terms that you use that are like intersectoral, that you use in your communities, in your regions, and in your countries? So so go ahead and do that now. And I'll just share the 2 that we identified in preparing for this webinar that are common in our work in Canada is cross-sector and also multi-stakeholder. So multi-stakeholder collaborations, cross-sector tables. Okay, now we're moving in. We're gonna start, I'm just gonna shrink up everybody's faces here so I can look at the slides and my notes. So we wanted to tell you about the original French tool. This tool was created through a multi-step process. And basically that involved the original research guided by questions from grassroots actors. And these actors were academics, and also you're going to learn about them in a minute, some community-based initiatives and coalitions in Quebec. So the development was a multi-step process that involved 4 workshops, prototyping and testing of the tool, then moving the tool online where you can see it now, and then the launch of the French tool was with Commune Agir in October of last year. Okay, next slide. So here's a little bit about how collaborative the development of this tool was. So it's an academic community partnership, and the researchers are from the University of Montreal, and the Canada chair of Approche Communautaire and Inequalities in Health. And then Commune Agir, who hosted the launch of the French tool, is a Quebec organization that has a lot of parallels with Tamarack, does a lot of capacity building, a lot of knowledge mobilization. They're wonderful. They have great online tools as well, beyond just this one. And then there's a coalition in Montreal called the Table de Quartier, which is like the neighborhood roundtables coalition, So neighborhood roundtables around Montreal actually work in coalition together as well, and they've worked in coalition on the production of this tool. Next slide. So now about the translation from the tool from French to English. So it was launched about a year ago in French, and the next month we began working on the English translation. And that's when I got involved. That's when Pamela and Tamarack got involved. And the translation was also a multi-step process. It included like what would normally be considered the translation, but that wasn't the end of the process because we also facilitated a meeting of bilingual experts who then reviewed and made changes to the translation, looking at what was the common English usage that we were familiar with. And then later there was a pre-test after many edits and lots of work, especially by Marie-Pier and Angèle. There was a pre-test with practitioners, and then finally more edits, and then of course the production and the online launch, which is today. Thank you for all being with us today for this launch. Marie-Pier, we just thought we'd pause for a second for you to say, you know, why did you go to all this effort? Why translate the tool to English?
Yes, it's following the launch in French, neighborhood tables in the West Island of Montreal. A lot of people speak English there, and they show an interest in translation. That's why we decided to make that translation.
Thanks. Yeah. So, and for those of us who even aren't working bilingually, it's wonderful that you made the translation to English because it allows this to be shared in many other places. So a little bit about the research findings now behind the tool, which
Sorry,
I'm gonna...
like Gillian, I don't know why I cannot come back on the...
oh, maybe Rute can help us with that?
I need
going
to come
backwards.
back.
We're going to slide...
That's fine, that's fine.
11. Okay, yeah, because it's yours now, Marie-Pier.
Yes, it's mine. Okay, so here we chosen to organize the information in 3 modules. Each module has its function. So in module 1, it aims to taking ownership of the foundation of the tool. In module 2, it aims to mapping the key events of a project and translating them into a chain of transitional outcomes. And module 3 aims to diagramming a project chain of transitional outcomes, identifying what has been learned and reinvest it in the action. So here, so in module 1, it includes a visual presentation of in Prezi format with audio example from experiences of neighborhood tables in Montreal. It also includes different documentation, for example, research presentation, publications, and other kind of documents who can help you to take ownership of the foundation of the tool. In module 1, like I said, the theory behind the tool is explained. So Gillian, could you explain us the foundation of the tool, please?
Right, okay. Great, so these are the key research findings, and we have 2 slides about this. So the first area is that local intersectoral action or multi-sector action, as Cheryl Stetsko-Main had put into the chat, in the area of social development leads to tangible, material, and social transformations in living environments. And that these transformations affect availability and accessibility of resources that promote health and well-being. Another really interesting piece of the findings is that the transformations correspond to local culture, history, and needs. It's really interesting. It might not be that surprising to us, but it's really great to see that confirmation of the kinds of dialogues that we have around local specificity. Okay, so moving on. This is the central finding of the research, and it's what the tool is built around, which was the identification of 12 transitional outcomes that mark progression. So they mark the movement of action towards its effects. So this is really the theoretical, you know, I'm putting my hands up because I'm very spatial, but I imagine it that, you know, there's 12 different transitional outcomes that we move through, and they link together in as coalitions and roundtables and collective action moves towards its effects. So here's a little bit more of a definition of a transitional outcome. It's observable. It's an observable indication of action as it occurs. That's great for measurement, for monitoring, for collective dialogue. And then the transitional outcomes represent events that mark the progression of that action. I had a nice little dialogue with Angèle about a week ago about this, that making that clarity that the transitional outcomes, there's 12 of them, but they are just types of outcomes. They are not steps. They are not linear. They combine in lots of different ways in our collaborative work. So this is what the tool is really all about. And so here we go, taking a look with this fabulous infographic that came to, can you just briefly tell us, Marie-Pier, where it came from? It's another site, but have you posted it anywhere online yet?
Not yet. I'm gonna put the link right now. It's
okay, so it is online, and thank you.
It's also on the tool, in the tool. So we had it in our tool, but it's coming from another another website.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to, I just need to orient myself here at the infographic. So we have 3 slides about the infographic that we're going to talk in a minute about the 12 transitional outcomes. But first, just so that you know, they were identified as falling into 3 areas or domains of intersectoral action. So these are the 3 areas: network setup and governance actions. And underneath here with the icons and the words, these correspond to what we're going to look at, the 12. They're kind of merged here. Can we go back? And I just wanted to say the other 2.
Sorry.
There we go. It's okay.
Because I cannot come back, so I don't know why the little les flèches ne sont plus là.
Okay, so that's fine. And people can open this up. If you open it now, you'll kind of have it to look at afterwards. So the second area is self-representing and influencing others. So it has to do with production, placement, activation, and also it's where spokespersons and people who are representing a network or a roundtable come in. And then the third area is aligning the necessary actors and resources. Both internally and then external facing. So we'll move on now. And now we're going to look at each of these transitional outcomes under the 3 areas, starting with the area of network, setup, and governance. And Angèle is going to help us understand, in particular, those transitional outcomes that might not be so immediately obvious by their definitions. So for example, network creation, it's kind of a big grab all, but it's not. So I'm wondering, Angèle, I'm going to read it out, and then could you tell us a bit more about what this speaks to? It says, establishment of linkages between heterogeneous social actors and non-human entities, knowledge, reports, policies, technologies, funding, including setting them into motion in projects. So would you be able to explain a bit more for us about this, especially the non-human entities? Angèle.
Okay, thank you. So we will talk about, I will focus on non-human entities in socio-technical networks, because networks are socio-technical because action is not only the fact of social actors, but also depends on all sorts of things in the environment that help shape the action, such as knowledge, rules, financing, programs, and all these human and non-human entities build the action, shape the action. So also we have the notion of ongoing construction. And it's important because during the process, some social actors withdraw and some other actors or non-human entities are added to the network so that they introduce new strategies, new ideas, new knowledge, and this process changed the course of action. And about controversies, will I talk about controversies now? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that they're numbered, but as we said earlier, they aren't linear. We don't need to spend much time on number 2, adoption of network governance structures and rules. Like, we just want to share, for example, terms of reference, you know. So yes, please, Angèle, if you can talk about resolution of controversies.
Yeah, because we think that controversies need a little bit more explanation. Controversies mean the confrontation of competing ideas on same question, same issues. It's an argued discussion on a situation, a phenomenon, a problem, and on the course of action. It is not just a disagreement such as fund management or work organization. Controversies is about ideas. And we can deal with controversies. We have to make something with that. And notably by shifting actors' position via deliberation and confrontation of differing positions. Also by addition of relevant actors that introduce new knowledge and resources. And another way is by strengthening certain ties and dropping others. So there is engagement of new actors and withdrawal of others. And lastly, we can deal controversies by development of stronger solution, enabling actors to improve their cooperation. To you, Gillian.
Thank you, Angèle. Okay, we're going to move to the next slide now. You know what I found as you were giving those definitions, you can hear the, as I know them now, having worked with you, the other transitional outcomes kind of pop in. It's just, it so beautifully shapes the complexity of the work, but helps us tease out the elements. So now we're moving into self-representing and influencing others. And here we have a line, sorry, I jumped. Production of intermediaries, which in a moment, what I'm going to suggest for this one, Angèle, is that I'll read one column and then you talk to that where the star is.
No, I will talk about both concepts.
Oh, you prefer? Okay, so I'll just read through all of them then. So the production of intermediaries expressing convergent ideas and positions, priorities, project solutions in material form. So now it's converging. Placement of intermediaries, introduction of intermediaries into other networks or to decision makers and media and into other intermediaries, such as a brief. Number 6, activation of intermediaries, which is promotion and use of intermediaries by strategic actors or networks. Then we have representation by spokespersons, which are actions, statements to communicate positions, to generate interest, or to influence the position and the commitment of other strategic actors or networks. And finally, under here, the strengthening of those spokespersons and of those intermediaries, reinforcing the legitimacy and credibility of the spokespersons and intermediaries, and the intermediaries that the spokespersons convey, to ensure they're better recognized by populations and groups on whose behalf they speak and taken into greater consideration by strategic actors. So both sides there. Okay, so Angèle now is going to speak where the stars are, first about production of intermediaries.
Yeah, I will begin to talk about spokesperson, and after I will talk about intermediaries, because
Oh, okay.
spokespersons use intermediaries. So spokesperson, everybody knows what is a spokesperson. It is somebody who speaks on behalf of others. So collaborative groups need spokesperson to talk about what is want to say or to do. Um, spokespersons are an integral part of what makes collaborative exist, endure, or decline. Also, maybe because spokesperson may be not so good, or the context may be not the good at this moment. So the strength of spokesperson is based on two things: their legitimacy and their credibility. Their legitimacy is the position they occupy. So the legitimacy arises from this position they occupy. This position confers them recognition by others. Example, an intersectoral body coordinator. The coordinator has the legitimacy to represent the collective group. And the credibility is granted by others. It's the value that others place on the information the spokesperson convey and their mediation skills. And so spokesperson use a variety of tools to contribute to their representations. And these tools act as intermediaries between the first network and the others network to which they want to talk. And this term intermediaries refers to many tools such as plan, reports, a brief that gather and present the ideas of the collective, newsletter that communicate the ideas to other actors, or a network of interest to whom they want to address. And so these intermediaries materialize on a concrete form to the ideas, because these intermediaries circulate among actors, materialize actors' ideas and project, stabilize agreement between actors. When the project is written, this project become more stable. And intermediaries connect actors with other. So we have three transitional outcomes about intermediaries. Intermediaries are produced, they are placed, so they are introduced into other networks or decision makers, and they are activated, they are used by others actors other the initial network. And the last idea is that spokesperson and intermediaries are strengthening, comment je dis, renforcer, so.
Strengthen, strengthen.
Okay.
Mais la phrase en total, la phrase?
Oui, so.
Renforcer.
C'est ça.
Renforcer is they're strengthening, but do you mean
Okay.
they're strengthening each other? Is that what you're saying?
They are. We have to do some action to strengthen spokesperson and intermediaries. That's the 8th transitional outcome.
Oh, right. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And then that gives us more better resources for moving forward the work, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We're moving on to the third area, which is alignment. So we were talking about strengthening. Now we're talking about alignment of the necessary actors and resources. So here I'm going to read through them again. And then Angèle will go in detail to the one with the star, number 9. So number 9 is called alignment of interests, movement of actors. It's about converging of interest, position shifts, engagement of actors in new roles, transformations in power relationships that promote collective action. So all those kinds of movements. Number 10 is about resource acquisition, harnessing of necessary resources, which could be funding, labor, expertise, and technical support for the network's operation and for the achievement of the network's goals. Then number 11, expansion and strengthening of networks and their projects is about recruitment of new actors, the addition of additional and non-human entities, strengthening relationships within a network or between networks, and strengthening or expansion of the projects supported by these networks. And finally, number 12 is commitment, and so critical, commitment of decision makers in achieving change. The commitment of actors holding the reins of decision making and action, whether they're inside or outside a network. And I do need to pause to just say, for those of people who are online who do speak French, you know, in French, the word is engagement. So just think about the fullness of what that means. The commitment is also an act of commitment, an ongoing commitment. So number 9 now, Angèle will give us more understanding of that.
I just talk about alignment of interest to say that that is done by movement of actors. There is no possible progress in collective action if all actors remain on the same position. So it needs to have movement of actors, and actors must arrive to the alignment of their interest. So these movements are accomplished by the negotiation of mutual concessions, often with the help of a mediator. I will come back to mediator after. And movement is also accomplished by learning through the exchange of ideas and the confrontation of viewpoints, and by the resolution of controversies. These interaction and mediation make actors converging toward collective problem definition and problem solving, to negotiating shared interest, to engaging in new role, and mobilizing critical mass of actors in common project. And about mediator, so actors' movement are managed by mediators. Mediators' work creates new connection between actors that lead to change in the network and the project. So mediators are social actors whose actions transform networks. Gillian?
Okay, so thank you, Angèle. We are now moving from that complex but really vivid for me theory that you shared into a little tour of what the tool looks like and what's in there and what the hands-on stuff is that you are able to use now in English as well as in French. Marie-Pier, am I supposed to do it? Oh no, we're at number 2, and you're going to take us on a tour of module 2, right? Here we go.
Yes. Thank you, Gillian and Angèle, for explaining the content of the module 1. Now let's talk about the module 2. The module 2 aims to identify the significant event leading to observable effects in living environments, and to link these events to the more general theory that identified 12 generic transitional outcomes. So in module 2, you will find a facilitator guide that allows you to retrace the major effect of the project, but also to link them to the 12 transitional outcomes. In that module, you will find also many complementary documents which facilitate the realization of the workshop. For instance, you will find an invitation letter and some facilitation material within. So in the guide, there is an agenda proposal to trace the missing events of the project and to link them to the transitional outcomes. In step 2, like I don't think you can see what if I point, but in step 2 in the agenda, we suggest that the group take a moment to look at the foundation of the tool and become familiar with the terms. It's what we did already in the module 1 when we present the module 1. So before the meeting, the coordinator or the coordination or a coordination committee will have to identify some significant events to facilitate the workshop. And at the third step right there, you will validate and improve the project story. After identifying the most significant events, the workshop participant will link those significant events with transitional outcomes. Like for example, here's an example of the workshop. Like those two pictures show the beginning of the workshop and the end of the workshop. Like I said, there is the preparatory work before the workshop, such as putting together a banner with the highlights of the project. The workshop allows you to complete the story and to link those events to transitional outcomes.
Okay, now we're at module 3, and Marie-Pier is going to continue. And this module includes lots of templates and diagrams, grids, things that you can go in and edit and use. So it's sort of like half the work is done for you. And then you go from there.
Gillian. Yeah, so like Gillian said, there's a lot of templates, but the main reason why we give you templates, it's because the goal of that module is to gain an overall view of the project impact. So you will see there's ways of putting like the chain of transitional outcomes in a certain way, like you can see them well. And also to capture learnings in order to reinvest them in action. So let's look at all those templates. So the first one, it's a timeline. It makes it possible to keep traces and to transcribe the project into a table form. So there's different columns. The first one is the year, the month, the event. So it's all of the event that you put in the timeline. And there's also event impacts. And the last two columns are for transitional outcomes. We put two because sometimes there's more than one transitional outcomes associated to an event. Here's the diagram. So on that is the product of the research. This is the diagram that was present at the end of the case studies during the research. This template can be completed to capture a chain of transitional outcomes on a single page. And this template was very useful to those actors who participate at the research. I don't know if you can see because it's a little bit small, but you can find it on the website. In each of the ovals, there's a transitional outcomes. So one comes to append the event of the transitional outcomes, so as to reconstruct the chain of transitional outcomes. Okay, here's an example. Because you have the template, but when you add all the events, that's what it can look like. But that's a sample chain of transitional outcomes that you will find in the tool online. But I will show you like really quickly a few of the link. So it's an example of a project for modifying bus service in a remote neighborhood in Montreal. So first of all, the Community Intersectoral Committee held a forum of local social development to identify priorities for local action, which result in a document strategic direction. So event one. So you'll see on the template, there's a number 1. So it's where the first event goes. So as a transitional outcomes, the committee produced an intermediary. And to achieve those objectives included in the document, the committee set up a subcommittee to for access to fruit and vegetables. So it's event 2. So the little 2 that you can find on the diagram. So the committee created a network. So we talk about transitional outcomes, the one network creation, and so on. So I won't do all of those steps, but it goes until 9. And the 9, you can see the last one. It's when the City Transit Commission committed to changing the number 30 bus route. So the event number 1. This is associated with the following transitional outcomes: commitment and decision makers in achieving change. So this is an example that you can find on the website, and it's well described. So if you have more questions, you will find it there. Here's the last template that you have in the module 2. It's it's a guide of questions that allows learning lesson from the action, so a retrospective insight, and to reinvest the learning in action, so prospective insight. There is also question related to each transitional outcomes. So it helps to understand how each transitional outcomes has been mobilized to achieve effects, and to think at avenues to better use them in order to achieve expected goals or objectives. As it taught in the tool post-taught, we thought that the guide could be the subject of a second workshop in order to take a reflective look at the diagram. But however, the actor who has used the tool so far find a great interest in the grid. So in the grid, there's many questions that you can ask yourself and help to have a look at the action. So for some of them, they told us that the guide was the gateway to experimenting the tool and observing that the transitional outcome is not mobilized, and they will after refer to the theory in module 1. So they made they did it another way. So like the tool is a proposal, like you can see, for process based on theoretical knowledge to assess the effect on intersectoral action, but it can be used different ways. Like here, I have an example for you Sonia Racine from Communagir in Quebec, she used the transitional outcome in another kind of diagram than the one you will find in the tool. Whoa. Okay, that's fine. Here's another example with the Montreal neighborhood committee. I use transitional outcomes to monitor an action, and we represented the result in the form of a Socratic wheel. So point in closer from the middle represent the transitional outcomes who were the less mobilized. But it's important to understand that action to achieve result doesn't need to mobilize all the transitional outcomes. But this visual make it easy to see the strengths and the weaknesses, and to open up a dialogue to find promising avenues for achieving desired effects.
Thank you. Marie-Pier, as I was listening to you, I was reflecting that, yeah, we call it module 1, module 2, and module 3, but depending on our learning style, it might be best to start with module 3. Go in and look at the question grid and look at it, and then really, for me, you know, then I'd really imagine doing this, and then I would want to go back and say, let's go back to the theory and let me better understand, you know, what these 12 transitional outcomes are. Okay, I know we're running short on time, so but this already came up in the chat, and I've forgotten the name of the person who had asked it, but you know, when can we use this? And Angèle had already clarified, I wrote it down once, so he's like, don't wait till the end. Definitely it's retrospective, but it could be retrospective looking back. It could be early on. How do you, I've heard both of you speak about sort of at what point, like how far in do you need to be before you might do a retrospective? Could one of you answer that? Or
you need to, the action needs to be enough mature, like has enough story like behind, but it doesn't need to be at the end of his, doesn't have to have attended his objective or his goal. Like you can see, it can be also prospective. So for example, the one with the Socratic wheel I showed you, they wanted to use the transitional outcomes to monitor, so to have a retrospective analysis on their action. But what we learned, it's like when we did the wheel, we realized that one of the transitional outcomes wasn't really used. That was the one who involved mobilizing decision makers, and they found actions to succeed to join them. So like you see, like they were during their action, and the way that they reflect on their action, it helped them to go farther ahead.
thank you. And I just made a few notes too, because we talk about, and some of the people online like Julia, we talk about action, reflection, action cycles. So this is how the tool can fit into those cycles. Developmental evaluation, it really is a developmental evaluation tool. I mean, you can use it at different places, but it's really designed for that. And then just to wrap up, because this is our last slide before questions, we had a little chat last time, and Angèle was talking about les paniers. We were trying to translate this term, and finally it came to me. I haven't shared this with you yet, but like what would be a good version of the saying is the 12 transitional outcomes. It's like having cards in your deck, and you've got 12 cards, and you can play them. You don't have to play all of them, but you can play them, you know, in whatever order you want, and in response to the context. So when you're playing a game of cards, you're responding to the context, but you're very aware of those cards. Like the tool really builds our awareness and perhaps our ability to be more fluid, or make sure that we don't forget one of the cards that we, so I don't know what you two think about that, but I was like, oh, finally, okay. Oh, now we're passing it back to Pamela, who's going to facilitate the question and discussion for the final minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I have all these burning questions in my head now too, but I'm going to go and I'm going to be sure to ask the questions that others have. First of all, although some of the questions were answered, we have about 5 minutes or 4 minutes to answer a couple of questions. But I just want to go back. There was a question that somebody had about whether or not this is adaptable to online, and if you've had any opportunity to adapt the tool to use it in the online context that we're now in. So maybe you could just share a minute about that.
We haven't tried it. Yeah, we haven't tried it yet, but maybe we will have to. But actually, the will, all the will session has been online. So yes, we have used, but I think we need to, if we do it, we need to adapt the tool. But all the tool has to be adapted anyways. Every time, you need to adapt it to the context. So but yes,
also
later.
Put the challenge out there that whoever is listening and finds a tool exciting and wants to use it, you can try it online and share your exciting results with us as well, and let us know how it works.
There, please.
That would be great. There's a question here from Heather. It would be interesting to evaluate change in actors as a result of this process. For example, how has this process, this work changed what they are hopeful about or worried about, or change their feelings of belonging, etc. It's an interesting comment. It would be interesting, absolutely. Does anybody want to comment on that?
I will read the question.
Actually, Gillian, you were asking, you sent us a question today or yesterday about Angèle worked on 2 tools. The tool that we present right now, but there's another tool to evaluate the partnership. So it's another tool, but it could be interesting to use that tool first at the beginning to see all the partnership, where the partnership stand on at beginning of the process. Make the process of the tool that we are showing today, and after that, doing again the other exercise on partnership to see if it did help the partnership to evaluate in their dynamics. Maybe that could be interesting, but it's true that when we do those kind of exercise, it moves something. It moves something inside of the partnership. So for sure, it will have effect on the dynamic itself. Angèle,
I will add just the idea that this tool is an assessing tool to assess action, to conduct action, and it's also a tool to learn about action. It's a training tool, and so I think that across training, you will have this change in actors, because they will become more confident in their capacities. And I think it's the most important change in actors.
I want to pitch in and add to that.
Sure.
I am not an academic. I have not done research, but I so believe that when we learn side by side across our differences at these multi-sector tables, it really takes us a long way, just by being co-learners together. So even in that process of using a tool, we have to learn it a little bit, and then in the learning, we have this common language that then I feel becomes a resource for working together. Is it one of the intermediaries if we use it, Angèle? I think there's other questions to answer, though. I'm probably way too.
Well,
Pamela.
No, I think that's a really good point, actually, because one of the questions I had in my head as you were talking about the transitional outcomes and the relationship between the spokesperson and the intermediaries, I kept thinking, well, this is really important in terms of relationship building and what kind of influence that this tool, the experience of using the tool, can have actually on the relationship building aspect of the work. And so I really appreciated it in thinking about it that way. Just one last quick question, because we're running out of time, but there's just one question around the notion that it's an anonymous attendee just said that this is a very theoretical approach to assessments, and have you created a more simplified version for grassroots community to use without detailed explanation?
Yeah, I was just trying to answer this question by the board, but I think that you have to go on the tool, and you will find on the second module, you will find more grassroots ideas to conduct this kind of process. Maybe it looks like hard to understand, theoretical, but it is really applied in the tool Marie-Pier has built. And I invite you to look at the tool, the second and the third module. We will find some application, practical application, I think.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I just
go ahead.
Yeah, I just add somebody asked again, like where the tool can be accessed. So I just had the link again in the chat, so you will it will be easy to access. But like Angèle said, it looks very theoretical, and yes, it's based on theory, but when you go on the website, you will find some part with more grassroots. And for example, I said the grid is often the way like actors get into the tool, because the grid it's questions, it's a question grid with very like I think it's very close from the practice, from like and yeah, so there's many part who's being that we did it a way that like it can be easily taken.
Oh, great.
Just,
Thank you. And also just one last comment from Angèle. And
yeah,
then
just to say that we will try to answer each question. Not we didn't answer now during the webinar.
Oh, great.
It
Okay.
can answered after.
That's right. I'll share the questions with our speakers, and they'll share their responses in an email, and we'll be sending it out with the links again to the tool. And please also note that you can go onto the Tamarack website, and the tool will be, there's a page as well with the tool links there. So you have lots of different ways to access, and we hope that you have an opportunity to use them. They're really great tools. And I want to thank you so much again for your presentations today. It was really interesting, and it's been a pleasure working with you. I'm just going to pass it off to Rute very quickly so she can make a few announcements. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Pamela. I just wanted to share quickly some virtual workshops that are coming up in the new year. The first one's going to be on community engagement, and that's actually going to feature Pamela, as well as Lisa, our Director of Community Engagement. And you're going to learn some of the tools and the latest approaches for navigating the changing nature of community engagement. Next up is co-design, facilitating community-led innovation. This is going to feature Lisa again, as well as Liz, our co-CEO, and you're going to learn tools and step-by-steps about how to facilitate collaborative community innovation sessions. And lastly, this is just the Foundations of Community Engagement course. You can learn alongside Lisa, as well as over 200 other learners. It's kind of like a Community Engagement 101, and you just expand your toolkit on community engagement. And lastly, as Pamela said, the recordings and links and resources will be shared with you a few days after the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thanks to our speakers for sharing this new tool, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining us.